She was only supposed to clean the floors, but one mistake changed everything. In front of the richest man in the room, Emily spilled a bucket of water that exposed not just her presence, but her courage. From that moment, envy and lies tried to destroy her, framing her for crimes she never committed. Yet in the middle of humiliation, a billionaire discovered that true beauty wasn't on the runway, it was in her heart. This story will break your heart and heal it again. If you believe that real love and truth always find a way, comment below. Love always wins. The night air around the hills of Los Angeles was warm, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the gardens surrounding Nathan's sprawling estate. Inside, crystal chandeliers lit the marble halls, casting golden light over the dozens of guests who had gathered. Cameras flashed, glasses of champagne clinked, and whispers filled the air. To the world, it looked like just another dazzling fashion event, a contest for the elite, a runway where only the most beautiful could shine. Models arrived one after another, draped in silk and sequins, each certain she was about to fight for the contract of a lifetime. But behind Nathan's carefully composed smile, a secret burned. This wasn't about business. This wasn't about fame. He wasn't searching for the next face of his brand. He was searching for a woman who could pierce through the emptiness of his life. Someone who would love him not for his money, not for his empire, but for himself. From a balcony overlooking the crowd, Nathan turned to his assistant, Tyler. "They all think they're here for a campaign," Nathan said quietly, his voice low and steady. Tyler hesitated. "And you're certain, sir, this is the way to do it?" Nathan's eyes swept over the room. "If I can find authenticity in this sea of pretense, then maybe I'll finally stop feeling alone." Miles away, in a modest apartment on the edge of the city, another story unfolded. Emily stood by the sink, her uniform folded neatly in a plastic bag. The day had been long. Her body ached from hours of work, but there was no time to rest. A phone call from the cleaning agency had changed her plans. A last-minute shift at a mansion. The pay was modest, but every dollar mattered. She glanced toward the small bedroom where her mother rested. The sound of her soft breathing was uneven, fragile. "Mom," Emily whispered, kneeling beside her bed. "I'll be back soon, I promise. Just another job." Her mother stirred and opened her eyes, managing a weak smile. "You work too hard, sweetheart," Mary murmured. "Don't forget, life is more than survival." Emily brushed a strand of hair from her mother's forehead. "I know, but I need to make sure you're okay first." She kissed her mother's hand and slipped out into the night. To Emily, this was just another shift, another evening of scrubbing floors in silence. But destiny was waiting inside that mansion. What began as a simple job would set her life on a path she never imagined, a path that would entwine her world with Nathan's forever. The mansion was alive that night, its walls vibrating with music and conversation, a place where every corner seemed to breathe luxury. Chandeliers rained light across the ballroom, bouncing off polished marble floors and sequined gowns. The women, tall and dazzling, moved like flames of color, their laughter sharp, rehearsed, designed to be heard by the right ears. Nathan's estate, perched high above Los Angeles, looked less like a home and more like a temple of wealth. Emily entered through the back, clutching the strap of her worn cleaning bag like a lifeline. She had been given the uniform just an hour earlier, a thin grey shirt and loose black pants that felt like they exposed her as someone who didn't belong. The sharp contrast between her modest clothes and the diamonds glittering in every direction was almost painful. She kept her head down, walking with careful steps as if even the sound of her shoes might offend. Her plan was simple. Finish her assigned tasks, keep invisible, and leave before anyone even knew she had been there. She wasn't a guest, she wasn't a model, she wasn't even a staff member who belonged. She was a temporary hire, a shadow among the light, but invisibility in such a place was almost impossible. Emily carried a silver bucket of water, weaving between tables stacked with champagne flutes, her heart racing whenever she brushed too close to a sequined gown. She tried to breathe, to remind herself that she had cleaned places like this before, but never with such an audience, never in the presence of men and women who looked like they had stepped straight out of magazines. She could feel their eyes brushing her, even when they weren't. At one corner of the hall, Vanessa leaned against a pillar, her crimson dress clinging to her body like liquid fire. She was easily one of the most admired contestants, a model whose face graced billboards across the city. When her gaze landed on Emily, it wasn't curiosity that stirred, it was disdain. She tilted her head, a smirk curling at her lips. "Guess they let in the help through the front door now," Vanessa muttered to another model, loud enough for Emily to hear. Her companion let out a small laugh, the kind that sliced deeper than a shout. Emily's cheeks flushed. She tightened her grip on the bucket and kept walking, eyes fixed on the floor. She told herself she didn't care, that words couldn't bruise skin, but humiliation had a weight of its own, and it pressed heavy on her shoulders. She bent near the buffet to mop a spill, her body hunched low, when a group of men passed by. Their suits were sleek, their cologne sharp. One of them chuckled, pointing. "Look at that, Cinderella's here, but she forgot her glass slipper." Laughter erupted, and Emily's hand froze on the mop handle. She wanted to vanish, to dissolve into the marble, to wake up back in her tiny apartment beside her mother, where no one looked at her like she was dirt on the floor she scrubbed. But there was no escape. Not yet. Nathan had been watching from the far side of the room. Dressed in a tailored black suit that hugged his frame, he looked every bit the untouchable host. To the world, he was a figure of power, broad shoulders, sharp jaw, eyes that cut like steel. But inside, the scene before him stirred something else. He saw the laughter directed at the janitor, the way she tried to shrink herself to avoid notice. Something about the quiet dignity with which she endured it struck him harder than any sparkling smile he had seen on the runway. He leaned slightly toward Tyler, who stood just behind him. "Do you see her?" he asked softly, nodding in Emily's direction. Tyler followed his gaze. "The cleaning girl." "Yes." Nathan's voice was calm, but there was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. "She's different." Tyler raised a brow but said nothing. Nathan's interest was already unusual enough. The moment that would shatter the night came quickly, unexpected and irreversible. Emily, desperate to retreat, picked up her bucket again. She moved toward a narrow passage near the main stage, her thoughts tangled in shame. The floor had been polished to glass, and her shoes, worn at the soles, gave little grip. As she hurried, her foot caught on the edge of a carpet, her balance teetered, and before she could steady herself, the bucket tilted forward. Water spilled in a glittering arc through the air, like a cruel trick of light. It cascaded downward, drenching the man who happened to be stepping past her at that precise moment. Gasps shot through the room, followed by silence so sharp it rang in her ears. Emily's breath locked in her chest. She looked up, and her heart stuttered. The man before her was tall, commanding, his suit now clinging to his chest and arms in a darkened sheen. Drops of water slid down his jawline, catching in his hair. His expression was unreadable, somewhere between shock and disbelief. She didn't know it yet, but she had just soaked Nathan Reed, the host, the billionaire, the very man everyone else was trying desperately to impress. Her face turned crimson. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, rushing forward with the rag from her bag, her hands trembling. "I didn't mean, I wasn't looking, Nathan raised a hand, halting her panic. Then in the silence, he did something no one expected. He laughed, a deep, unguarded sound that rolled through the air and cracked the ice of the room. "I've needed a cold shower all night," he said lightly, his voice carrying just enough humor to disarm the tension. A ripple of murmurs followed. Some chuckled nervously, others glared in disbelief. Who was this girl, This clumsy stranger who had not only drenched Nathan Reed, but also drawn laughter from him. Emily stood frozen, her rag pressed awkwardly in her hands. I'm really sorry, she repeated, her eyes wide. Please, I can... You've apologized enough, Nathan interrupted gently, his eyes meeting hers. For the first time that evening, his gaze softened. It was a strange moment, suspended in time. Emily's pulse hammered in her ears, her cheeks flushed with humiliation. Yet beneath her shame, something unfamiliar stirred, a current she couldn't name. Nathan felt it too. He wasn't supposed to notice her. She was background, invisible, and yet, in the middle of a room filled with beauty, it was the girl with the trembling hands and honest eyes who captured him. Tyler approached quickly, whispering, "We should get you a change of clothes, sir." But Nathan's gaze didn't move from Emily. "Later," he said. Then, lowering his voice so only she could hear, "Don't let them make you feel small." Emily blinked, her throat tight. She wanted to answer, to say something clever, or at least grateful, but her voice wouldn't obey. All she could do was nod slightly, her hands twisting the rag in silence. Across the room, Vanessa watched the exchange with narrowed eyes, her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The little janitor had just done what none of them could, captured Nathan's attention, and Vanessa wasn't about to let that stand. The music resumed. The laughter swelled again, but nothing was the same. Emily slipped away to a quiet corridor, her heart racing, her body still trembling. She pressed her back against the wall, closing her eyes. She didn't know who that man truly was. She didn't know she had just collided with the one person who could rewrite her fate. But she could still feel his gaze, still hear his words echoing inside her. "Don't let them make you feel small." And for the first time that night, Emily wondered if maybe, just maybe, she had been seen. Nathan lay awake long after the party had quieted, his body still but his mind restless. The echoes of laughter, the glint of crystal glasses, and the parade of beautiful faces all blurred together into meaningless fragments. Only one image remained sharp in his thoughts, the young woman with trembling hands and eyes that held no calculation, no agenda, only raw honesty. She hadn't known who he was, hadn't tried to impress him, hadn't played the same rehearsed games that the others had mastered. In her shame, in her simplicity, she had shown him more truth than anyone else in that vast mansion. He rose from his bed before dawn, pulling open the curtains to let the city's lights bleed into the room. The silence pressed against him. He turned toward his desk, where Tyler's neatly organized reports on the contestants lay waiting. Nathan didn't touch them. Instead, his thoughts wandered back to her, the girl who carried water buckets while others carried perfume and diamonds. He needed to know more. By the time morning light spilled into the estate, Tyler found Nathan already dressed, his tie loose around his neck. Tyler held a folder thick with photographs and resumes. "The judges want your input on which models advance," he began, but Nathan cut him off with a gesture. "I want you to look into someone else for me," Nathan said. Tyler blinked. "Someone else? You mean one of the new arrivals?" "No." Nathan's gaze was steady. "The girl from last night. The one with the bucket. The janitor." Tyler's brow furrowed. "Yes." Tyler hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I'll see what I can find." Hours later, Tyler returned with a thin sheet of paper and a puzzled expression. "Her name is Emily, 24 years old, hired last minute through a staffing agency. She's not on social media, at least not in any way that matters. She doesn't have a portfolio, no connections to fashion. She's different." Nathan read the words carefully, though there wasn't much to read. Different. That was what he'd felt last night, and what stirred in him now. Meanwhile, Emily sat on a bench near the service entrance, waiting for her shift to begin again. She had begged the agency to let her stay one more day, even if just to collect the small paycheck. Her mother's medication wouldn't wait for pride. The humiliation of last night still clung to her, but she reminded herself she had endured worse. She had survived countless nights cleaning offices where no one said her name. She would survive this too. Her phone buzzed. It was her mother's number. She answered quickly. "Hi, Mom." "Emily," Mary said weakly, her voice thin from fatigue. "How was work?" Emily hesitated, not wanting to worry her. "It was fine. Just another event. Beautiful. Exhausting. You would have laughed at how clumsy I was." Mary chuckled softly, though the sound carried strain. "You've always been harder on yourself than anyone else. Remember, you're more than the work you do." "I know, Mom," Emily whispered. "I'll be home tonight, I promise." As she hung up, a voice startled her. "Emily, isn't it?" She turned sharply to find Nathan standing a few feet away. He had changed from his suit into a crisp shirt, the sleeves rolled slightly at his wrists. Without the spotlight and crowd, he seemed less untouchable, though no less striking. "Yes," she said quickly, her body stiff. I'm sorry again about last night. I swear I didn't see—" He raised a hand, silencing her. "You've apologized enough. Honestly, it was the most interesting thing that happened all night." Her eyes widened. "Interesting? I ruined your suit. You gave me a reason to laugh," he said. "That's rarer than you think." Emily shifted awkwardly, unsure how to respond. She wasn't used to men like him speaking to her at all, much less with kindness. "I should get back to work," she muttered, reaching for her mop. But Nathan didn't let the moment slip. "Come to dinner with me tonight." Her hand froze. She looked at him as if he had spoken in another language. "Dinner? Yes," Nathan replied evenly. "Nothing elaborate. Just dinner, no cameras, no spotlight, just two people talking." Emily's chest tightened. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. Why would a man like him want dinner with her? What would people say? How could she possibly afford a dress? But beneath the fear, another voice stirred. Her mother's. "Don't forget. Life is more than survival." "I don't think that's a good idea," Emily said softly. "Why not?" Nathan asked. His tone wasn't arrogant, but curious, as though he genuinely wanted to understand. "Because people like you don't invite people like me to dinner," she whispered. Nathan tilted his head. "Maybe I'm tired of people like me." The words disarmed her. For a moment, she forgot the mop in her hand, the sweat at her temple, the weight of all the differences between them. He looked at her not as a billionaire looking down, but as a man looking straight into her. She drew in a shaky breath. "I'll think about it." Nathan smiled faintly. "That's all I ask." That evening, as the sun bled orange across the horizon, Emily found herself staring into the cracked mirror of her tiny bathroom. She wore a simple dress borrowed from a neighbor, the fabric plain but clean. She brushed her hair twice as long as usual, wishing she had something finer, something worthy of the man waiting for her. Yet when she remembered the way he had looked at her, she wondered if maybe she was enough. At the estate, Nathan had arranged a small table in the garden, far from the noise of the ongoing contest. Lanterns hung from the branches, casting warm pools of light. No press, no cameras, no glittering audience. Just the night air and the quiet hum of crickets. Emily approached slowly, her heart thundering. "This is beautiful," she said as she reached the table. "I thought we could both use a place to breathe," Nathan replied, pulling out a chair for her. They sat, and for a long moment, silence hovered. Emily fiddled with the edge of her napkin, nervous. Nathan watched her, his eyes softening. "Tell me about yourself," he said. She laughed lightly, though there was no humor in it. "There isn't much to tell. I clean, I work, I take care of my mom. That's pretty much it." "That's already more real than anything I heard last night," Nathan said. "Every contestant had a script. Every smile was rehearsed. But you don't pretend." Emily met his gaze, startled. "Why does that matter to you?" "Because I'm surrounded by people who only see me for what I have," he admitted, "not who I am. They see the money, the power, the name. But you, when you spilled that bucket, you looked at me like I was just a man who got wet." Her lips parted slightly, caught between embarrassment and something deeper. "I didn't mean to insult you." "You didn't," Nathan said softly. "You reminded me what it feels like to be human." They talked for hours. Emily shared memories of her childhood, the nights she stayed up singing softly to her mother when the pain grew worse. Nathan spoke of his loneliness, how the higher he climbed, the less people saw him as a person. They discovered a strange rhythm between them, two different worlds, yet bound by the same hunger for something genuine. At one point, Emily laughed at a story Nathan told about escaping a tedious board meeting by pretending his phone had died. The sound of her laughter carried through the garden, light and free, and Nathan felt something inside him unclench. As the night deepened, Emily grew quiet, her hands folded in her lap. "I don't understand why you asked me here," she confessed. "Because you're the only person in this house who makes me feel alive," Nathan replied simply. Her breath caught. She looked at him, searching for insincerity, but found none. Somewhere between the laughter and the silence, something fragile but undeniable took root. Neither of them knew what would come next. Neither knew the storms waiting just beyond the horizon, but for that night, under the lantern light, they were just Emily and Nathan, two souls finding each other in a world that had tried to keep them apart. Vanessa saw it. She didn't need gossip or confirmation. The evidence was etched in the strange softness of Nathan's expression when Emily was near. It wasn't the look he had for the cameras, or for women like her, women who learned to perfect every angle and syllable. It was quieter, unguarded. When Emily approached, he leaned in, he listened, he forgot the room. That was the most dangerous part. The room no longer contained his attention, the girl with borrowed shoes did. Vanessa watched from a mezzanine balcony, one hand wrapped around the cool stem of a champagne flute, her crimson nails tapping a faint rhythm against glass. Below her, the garden flickered with lantern light where the dinner had been set the night before. Private, discreet. She had only needed the smallest clue to put the pieces together. The reserved table, the path lit all the way to the south lawn. Nathan's absence from the VIP lounge, replaced by an ease in his shoulders she hadn't seen in years of pursuing events like this. And then the staff whispers, the glances toward a service corridor each time the cleaning girl slipped by. "Who is she?" one of the other contestants asked, sidling up next to Vanessa as they pretended to admire the view. The woman's name didn't matter. Her presence did. Other people needed to see what Vanessa saw. "Nobody," Vanessa said, letting a small, amused smile lift her mouth. "But give a man something that looks like a secret, and suddenly it becomes everything." She didn't look away from the garden. She took a slow sip, the bubbles bitter on her tongue. "Nathan will come to his senses. I'll help," the other woman laughed, a breathy sound. "And how exactly does one help a billionaire come to his senses?" Vanessa's eyes cooled. "By reminding him who belongs in his world, and who doesn't." Inside the house, laughter rose and fell like tides, and the contest continued its orchestrated glamour. But a quieter contest began elsewhere, unseen and more ruthless. Vanessa moved like a dancer through the rooms, her gown a knife of red in a sea of metallics. She slipped into the powder room, where two makeup artists chatted while reorganizing their kits. "Ladies," she said lightly, setting her clutch on the counter. "Have you seen the service girl wandering near the green room? She seemed lost." She chose the word carefully, letting it carry a note of worry rather than disdain. People responded better to concern. One of the artists shook her head. "No, but security has been tense tonight. Something about restricted access." Vanessa smiled like that was unfortunate. "Such a shame if anyone ended up where they shouldn't be. I heard there were some sensitive items backstage. A press pass, a chain, an envelope bearing the crest of Nathan's company, things that would look damning in the wrong hands." She left before the women could respond, gliding down a quieter hall. Outside the security room, a young guard hovered, checking a tablet with the earnest self-importance of someone new to his post. Vanessa's reflection flared briefly in the glass as she approached, her perfume trailing behind her. She lowered her voice to a soft, conspiratorial murmur. "You're doing a wonderful job keeping all this under control," she said, leaning just close enough to fluster him. He straightened, flattered, cheeks coloring. "Thank you, Mom." She tilted her head toward the camera wall visible through the open door, a grid of the estate's angles and entrances. "It must be difficult with so many unfamiliar faces. I imagine people wander into rooms without realizing where they are." He hesitated. "We try to keep an eye out." Vanessa let concern cloud her face. "I saw a staff girl earlier. Dark hair, grey shirt, near the West Gallery where Mr. Reed keeps private items. I'm sure it was a mistake, but with press here, rumors can be loud." She let silence bloom, an invitation to chivalry. "If someone like you could make sure there's no confusion, I'm certain Mr. Reed would be grateful." Grateful. The word did its work. The young guard nodded quickly. "Of course," Vanessa smiled, then touched his forearm lightly as she withdrew. Another carefully curated gesture that carried the promise of favor, without offering anything at all. She did not need him to betray anything. She just needed him to watch and to remember what she had planted. She moved to the green room, where a freelance photographer sorted through a mess of memory cards, scrolling quickly on a laptop while a portable light cast harsh angles across his face. He barely looked up when she entered. He didn't need to. He knew who she was. He knew her face sold campaigns. "I need a favor," Vanessa said, lowering herself gracefully onto a stool. He blinked, interest sharpening. "What kind of favor?" "The quiet kind." She crossed one leg over the other, letting the slit in her dress part like a threat. "If someone were photographed somewhere, unflattering, could you sharpen the story, make it clear?" His eyes flicked to the door. "I don't make fake photos." "Of course not," she said, unfazed. "But you adjust lighting. You compress angles. You isolate subjects from the noise. Truth benefits from clarity." She slid a business card across the counter with 2 fingers. "And clarity pays." He stared at the card, at her name embossed in gold. "Whose truth?" Vanessa's smile was all winter. "The kind that keeps the right people in the right rooms." By the time night sagged into the fragile quiet before dawn, the mansion had already started humming again, caterers replenishing buffets, stylists steaming gowns, assistants mapping out the next day's schedule. Emily arrived for her shift with a thermos of tea and eyes that still glowed with lingering warmth from the garden dinner. She kept replaying Nathan's words as she walked through the service corridor. "You're the only person in this house who makes me feel alive." They didn't feel like a line. They felt like a confession he hadn't meant to say out loud. She checked in with the head of cleaning, a woman named Marta, who handed her a caddy of supplies without comment. Emily glanced toward the main hall, already set for the next round of the competition, and tried to make herself smaller, quieter, as though gratitude could be a shield. Her phone hummed once in her pocket, a message from her mother. "Good morning, Angel. Don't forget to eat." Emily smiled, typed back a quick heart. She'd stopped using words sometimes when words felt like too much, and tucked the phone away. As she rounded a corner with her mop and bucket, a pair of models swept past, their heels clicking in irritated unison. Emily shifted to give them room. One of them brushed her shoulder deliberately. "Watch it," she said under her breath. "I'm sorry," Emily replied automatically, stepping back. She didn't realize at first that Vanessa had paused at the end of the corridor, waiting for her. "You again," Vanessa said lightly, as if they were old acquaintances meeting at brunch. "You get around, don't you?" Emily blinked, surprised. "I'm just working. If you need me to move." "Oh, I don't need anything," Vanessa said, leaning casually against the wall, the picture of easy superiority. "But I was curious. Did you enjoy your romantic night in the garden?" The world narrowed. Emily's fingers tightened around the mop handle. I don't know what you mean. Of course you do, Vanessa said. Utterly kind, utterly cruel. I notice things, so does everyone else. A word of advice. Men like Nathan are generous. They're also easily bored. I didn't ask him for anything, Emily said, heat creeping up her neck. She hated that she sounded defensive. She hated that this woman could make her doubt what she knew to be true. That last night had been human and unadorned. Vanessa tilted her head. You don't have to ask to take. Then, as if the conversation bored her, she pushed off the wall and smiled. Enjoy your shift. The rest of the morning frayed slowly, thread by thread. Emily worked, but the air felt charged with a strange static. People looked too long or looked away too quickly. A waiter handed her a tray of discarded flutes and couldn't quite meet her eyes. Two production assistants whispered near a doorway, then fell silent when she approached. At one point, she reached for a trash bag in a side office and found a leather folder on the counter, stamped with the company crest. It didn't belong there. She left it untouched, heart beginning to trip. Minutes later, someone hurried in and grabbed it, glaring at her like she'd been caught with a hand in it. By mid-morning, the whispers knit themselves into sentences. Did you hear? She was in the West Gallery. They said she had a key. Someone saw photos. You wouldn't think she had it in her. The tone wasn't outrage. It was delight, gleeful, hungry, the kind of delight that builds bonfires. Emily tried to find Tyler once, thinking maybe she could ask him to pass a message to Nathan. She turned a corner and almost collided with him carrying a stack of event folders. Papers spilled. She dropped to help gather them, murmuring apologies. It's fine, Tyler said, then looked up and recognized her with a half smile. You okay? She glanced around, kept her voice low. If you see Nathan, could you tell him that I didn't go anywhere I wasn't supposed to be? I think someone's saying things. Tyler's expression sharpened. He opened his mouth to ask, but a call came through on his earpiece and he flinched. I'm sorry, I have to. He hesitated, then added, I'll make sure he knows you wanted to talk. Before she could thank him, he was gone, pulled away by a crisis only assistants understand. Emily stood there for a second with her hands empty and her throat full, then went back to work. In a makeshift media room, the photographer Vanessa had recruited sat before his laptop, scrubbing through images. In one frame, Emily walked past a velvet rope that marked a semi-private hall, an angle that made it look as though she was slipping behind it. He cropped the image, dialed up the contrast, highlighted her figure with a vignette that erased the signs. In another, a shot from the green room caught Emily reaching for a glass left beside a table where a small jewelry case had been earlier. The case was out of frame, but the implication was suggestive. He didn't create anything that wasn't there. He simply removed the context that absolved it. The images changed hands quickly. A production coordinator glimpsed them, told a friend in catering, who mentioned it to the head of security, who remembered Vanessa's warning from the night before. By noon, a story had emerged with the shape of truth and the heart of a lie. The cleaning girl had been snooping, the cleaning girl had tried her luck, the cleaning girl had wandered into rooms where her kind didn't belong. When the head of security found Emily, he had 2 guards with him and a folder in his hand. They approached her near the side entrance where she was refilling a bucket. The ordinary scrape of metal on tile sounded too loud. Emily? He asked, voice official, no warmth. She straightened, surprised. Yes, I'm going to need you to come with us. Her stomach dropped. Why? What's wrong? We've received reports you were seen in restricted areas. We need to ask you a few questions. I wasn't, she swallowed. The bucket handle bit into her palm. I didn't go anywhere I wasn't sent. I've been cleaning hallways and... He opened the folder and slid out a print. Grainy, cropped. Emily, caught mid-step near the velvet rope. This is you. Yes, but... And this? Another image. Her hand reaching toward the glass in the green room. That's a water glass. I was clearing... She stopped. The words were boulders in her mouth. She looked up at the men, at their closed faces, and felt the bottom drop out from under her. Please. This isn't what it looks like. I didn't. Mr. Reed's office is off limits to all staff not on clearance, the head of security said, reciting company policy like scripture. The West Gallery is locked for a reason. I never went in, she said, hearing the tremor in her voice and hating it. I stayed outside the rope. I didn't touch anything that wasn't trash. You can check the cameras. There must be footage that shows. We'll review further, he said, but the tone carried a verdict. For now, we'll have to ask you to leave the premises. Emily stared. Leave? But my shift, you'll be compensated for your hours. Compensated? The words scraped her skin like sand. Please, she whispered, resting a hand against the nearest wall to steady herself. Please, can I speak to Nathan? He knows me. He'll understand this is a mistake. Mr. Reed is off-site for meetings, the man replied. He left early this morning? She closed her eyes. The room tilted for a second, then righted itself. Of course he wasn't here. Of course the one person who might have seen her was gone. Tyler, she said desperately. Can I talk to Tyler? He's unavailable. The guard stood like bookends, waiting. Emily nodded once, a small, broken nod that felt like surrender. She picked up her cleaning bag and the sweater she kept folded inside it. As they walked her down the hallway, staff looked away. Her humiliation had turned them polite. Vanessa stood near a doorway, speaking to a stylist, and didn't turn, didn't acknowledge, didn't need to. She had already won. Outside, the sky had gone gunmetal grey, heavy with the rare promise of rain. The guard stopped at the edge of the driveway and extended a hand for her event badge. She unclipped it, fingers numb, and placed it in the guard's palm. The gate opened with an indifferent hum. Traffic on the boulevard below murmured like a river. The first drop hit her cheek as she stepped onto the sidewalk, then another. Within minutes, the rain came fast, warm and merciless, flattening her hair against her head, seeping through the thin fabric of her borrowed dress beneath the uniform, turning the world into a smear of lights and water. She tucked the sweater under her arm to keep it dry. Pointless, and yet she tried. She started walking. At first, she told herself to breathe. One step, then another. The pavement gleamed black, the city stuck in a blurred watercolor of red taillights and neon signs bleeding into each other. Her shoes slipped once on a painted crosswalk, and she caught herself on a parking meter, chest heaving. She imagined walking forever, the mansion receding behind her into myth. What had she expected? That a dinner under lanterns meant she belonged. That a joke about a cold shower meant safety. That a man at the top of a golden tower could pull her up and not let go. She tried to banish the bitterness. Nathan hadn't been cruel. He hadn't made promises, but the world around him had its own gravity, and it crushed anything soft that came too close. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Her mother again. Emily slowed beneath the shallow awning of a closed cafe and answered, breathless. Hi, Mom. Are you on your way home? Mary asked, voice small but steady. It sounds loud. It's raining, Emily said, swallowing hard, forcing brightness into her tone. You'd like it. It smells clean. Are you all right? She shut her eyes. Behind her lids she saw the folder, the photos without context, the way the head of security had already decided what she was. She saw Vanessa's smile, pristine, practiced, merciless. I'm fine, Emily lied softly. I'll be there soon. Did you eat? I will. Don't let them turn you into someone you're not, Mary said faintly. Even if they don't see you. The words cracked something tender in her chest. I know, Mom. They hung up. Emily stood still until the awning overflowed, and a cold sheet of water slid down her back like a punishment. She flinched, then stepped out from the illusion of shelter and kept moving, the rain now a steady roar that made the city feel far away. She turned the night over in her mind, searching for mistakes she could fix if she could go back, words she could unsay, steps she could unstep, rooms she could avoid, looks she could erase. The harder she searched, the less she found. She had done nothing wrong except be seen. That, it turned out, was the worst trespass. By the time she reached her neighborhood, her clothes clung to her like a second skin. The streetlights there were dimmer, the sidewalks narrower, the pools of water deeper in the cracks. A dog barked behind a fence. Somewhere, a radio played a song so full of longing it felt like a message from another version of her, the one who still believed nights could change lives without trying to break them first. She passed a shop window and glanced sideways, startled by the stranger identical to her reflected back. Hair plastered to her skull, eyes too bright, shoulders set in the rigid line of someone holding in a sob. She lifted a hand to the glass, then let it fall. There was no fairy tale there, just a girl and a rainstorm. At the last block, the rain gentled to a fine mist, as if exhausted by its own anger. Emily shivered, pulled the sweater on over damp fabric, and climbed the stairs to her building. She stood in the hallway outside her door and pressed her forehead against the cool metal for a long moment, listening to the slow tick of water dripping from her clothes onto the concrete. She could have knocked, gone inside, let her mother's soft questions untangle her grief. But she stayed there with her hand on the knob, caught in the suspended breath between what she had hoped and what remained. She thought of Nathan's laugh echoing in the ballroom after the bucket crashed over him, the sound of surprise and relief and something almost boyish. She thought of the way he had said, "Don't let them make you feel small." She felt small now, and yet, beneath the ache, beneath the humiliation, a thread of stubbornness refused to snap. It wasn't pride, it was something older, a muscle memory of survival, shaped by years of being dismissed and needing to keep moving anyway. She wasn't sure what to do next, how to clear her name, how to breathe in a world that had decided who she was before she could speak. But she knew how to get through a night. She turned the knob and slipped inside. The apartment was dark except for the green glow of the microwave clock. She set her cleaning bag by the door and towed off her soaked shoes, wincing when her socks made wet slaps against the linoleum. She peeled the sweater away and draped it over a chair, then stood in the kitchen for a long time, listening to the rain soften until it was just a whisper. In the quiet, a truth settled hard at the base of her throat. Whatever last night had been, however honest, however beautiful, it couldn't change what she was to the world that housed him. It could not protect her. Maybe it had only marked her, a warning flare for the ones who needed to defend their stories. She wrapped her arms around herself, eyes burning, and let one sob slip free before she swallowed the rest. By morning, the storm would clear. By morning, the mansion would wake and grind forward, its gears turning, its lights blazing, its doors opening for people who had always known how to walk through them. By morning, Nathan would return and find the house humming with rumors and rules, but now, at the edge of night and rain, Emily stood alone with the echo of a new certainty. She had been a brief game, played by a world that didn't know her name, and she would not forget the way it felt to be pushed back outside. Nathan returned to the mansion late in the afternoon, his car gliding silently up the curved driveway, slick from the night storm. The city behind him sparkled beneath the clearing skies, but his thoughts were heavy. He had spent the morning locked in boardrooms, his mind pulled toward numbers and contracts, but not once had he felt present. Every minute he had thought of Emily. The memory of her laughter in the lantern-lit garden was a thread that tugged at him relentlessly, reminding him of something raw and rare, something he wasn't ready to let go. When the estate came into view, he noticed the shift in atmosphere almost immediately. Staff moved quickly but avoided his gaze. Contestants lingered in clusters, whispering with eyes darting toward the ground. Nathan stepped through the front doors into a house buzzing with tension, the air charged with something unsaid. Tyler was waiting just inside the foyer, holding a tablet against his chest. His face was drawn tight. "What happened?" Nathan asked at once, his instincts prickling. Tyler lowered his voice, aware of the ears around them. "She's gone." Nathan's brow furrowed. "Gone? Who? Emily, Tyler said. She was accused of sneaking into your office this morning. Security escorted her out. Vanessa provided photographs. They claim she was snooping. The words slammed into Nathan like a physical blow. He gripped the railing of the staircase, forcing his voice steady. That's impossible. I know, Tyler said quickly. I've worked with you long enough to know when something doesn't add up. But the images, they were convincing. Enough to sway the staff. Nathan's jaw clenched. Show me. Tyler hesitated, then opened the tablet. Grainy photos appeared. Emily near the velvet rope of the West Gallery, her figure cropped into isolation. Another image caught her reaching for a glass, the jewelry case absent from the frame. To an untrained eye, it looked damning. To Nathan, it looked wrong. She wouldn't, he said firmly. His voice carried a conviction that startled even him. That's what I thought, Tyler agreed. So I started checking. He swiped through screens, pulling up security feeds. Most of the footage from those areas is missing. Deleted. Deleted, Nathan snapped. Yes, Tyler said, but not cleanly. Whoever did it wasn't careful enough. Some fragments remain in the system. Look, he enlarged one clip. Vanessa, moving quickly through the West Gallery, glancing over her shoulder before slipping something from her clutch. Another showed her near the green room, adjusting objects on a table before walking out. Nathan's eyes narrowed. The truth unfolded with sickening clarity. She framed her. Tyler nodded grimly, and everyone believed it. Emily was humiliated. She begged to speak to you, but you weren't here. They sent her away. For a long moment, Nathan couldn't speak. He thought of Emily's face, her hesitant smile in the garden, her honesty. He thought of her walking out in the rain, alone, believing herself discarded. Guilt carved into him with ruthless precision. He turned sharply toward the door. "Where are you going?" Tyler asked. "To find her," Nathan said, his voice like iron. "I won't let her think I abandoned her." The drive across the city was a blur of lights and fury. Rain-slicked streets reflected neon. Tires hissed on pavement, and Nathan gripped the wheel as though sheer will could shorten the distance. With each mile, his mind replayed what Emily must have endured, the whispers, the stares, the shame. The thought that she believed he had let it happen burned deeper than anything Vanessa could have orchestrated. Emily's neighborhood was quieter, smaller, the kind of place Nathan had never truly known. He parked outside the worn building with its chipped paint and dim stairwell light. Climbing the steps 2 at a time, he felt a pressure in his chest unlike anything in his life of business deals and fortune. He was about to knock, not as Nathan Reed, the billionaire, but as Nathan, the man who had made a mistake. The door opened before he could raise his hand. Emily stood there, her hair damp and curling around her face, eyes ringed with shadows. She froze when she saw him, her breath catching. "Nathan," she whispered. "Emily," he said, his voice raw. Rain still clung to his shoulders from the dash through the street. "I was wrong. I should have been here. I should have protected you." She shook her head, her fingers tightening on the edge of the door. "You don't have to do this. It's over. I know what they think of me. I don't belong in your world." "No," he said fiercely, stepping closer. "You belong with me. You belong wherever you choose to stand, and I should have made that clear." Her eyes shimmered, tears she didn't want to release. "They showed pictures. Everyone believed them. Even you weren't here to say otherwise." "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "I know what they did to you. Tyler found the proof. Vanessa set you up. I saw it with my own eyes. And I let you walk out of that house thinking I doubted you. I can't take that back, but I can tell you the truth now. I never should have let you go." The silence stretched between them, heavy and fragile. Emily's chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. Part of her wanted to slam the door, to shield herself from more hurt. But another part, a part she couldn't silence, remembered his laughter when water had soaked him, the way he had listened beneath the stars, the way he had looked at her like she wasn't invisible. "Nathan," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I don't know if I can survive being humiliated again." You won't, he promised. Not while I have breath in me. I'll fight for you, Emily. Not for appearances, not for business, for you. The rain pattered softly against the window at the end of the hall. Emily closed her eyes, her hand slipping from the doorframe. When she opened them, something inside her had shifted. Not trust restored completely, but a spark refusing to die. She stepped back slowly, leaving the doorway open. Nathan exhaled, relief flooding through him, and crossed the threshold. He was soaked, exhausted, and burdened with guilt, but when Emily let him inside, he knew he had been given a second chance. They stood together in the small apartment, the scent of tea and rain clinging to the air. The walls were bare, the furniture worn, but Nathan had never felt more at home. Emily's presence filled the space with a warmth the mansion could never hold. He looked at her, his voice low but steady. I don't care about the contest. I don't care about the lies. All I care about is you. Emily's lips parted, her eyes searching his. For the first time since that brutal morning, hope flickered in her chest. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight she wasn't alone. The decision came at dawn, before the mansion woke, before the floral teams refreshed the centerpieces and the makeup chairs filled again. Nathan stood alone in his study, the windows open to the sharp, washed air that follows a storm. He could still hear the rain in his memory, a curtain between him and everything that had gone wrong. He dialed Tyler and didn't bother with greeting. Cancel it, he said. Tyler was silent for a beat. The contest, all of it, Nathan replied. Call the judges, the sponsors, the PR team. The competition is over. You realize there will be backlash, Tyler said carefully. Contracts, headlines, a lot of noise. There's already noise, Nathan said. I'm done letting it decide the truth. He exhaled, ran a hand over the back of his neck. The gala tonight stays. I'm going to say what should have been said from the beginning. Tyler's voice softened. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He paused. And Tyler, thank you. You saw what I couldn't. I won't forget it. Just make it count, Tyler said. I'll handle the rest. By mid-morning, word had slipped like water under doors. The contest was off. It moved through the mansion in quick, incredulous whispers, models checking phones, stylists freezing with curling irons held mid-air, producers swearing under their breath. Some thought it was a power play, a publicity stunt, an eccentric whim. Only a few understood there was a man at the center of it, not a machine. Vanessa stood at a mirror in the green room, painting her mouth the color of defiance. When the cancellation reached her, her hand paused only a fraction. She set the lipstick down and stared at her reflection, as if she could force the glass to concede that she still had control. A minute later, she lifted her chin and returned to perfecting the face the world expected. If the game had shifted, she would pretend it hadn't. In a small apartment across town, Emily folded a clean towel and placed it beside the sink. She had slept badly, haunted by rooms that would not forgive her. Yet when she woke, a single fact stood in the room. Nathan had come for her. He had looked at her with a certainty that steadied the ground. She did not know the rules of his world, but she knew what it felt like to be believed. She brewed tea for her mother, sliced fruit, and tried not to think about cameras or contracts. When her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, she almost ignored it. Then she read it. It was from Tyler. If you're willing, come tonight. The gala. He'll be on stage. He wants the truth seen. She stared at the screen, at the address she already knew too well. The idea of walking back into that house made her stomach knot, but beneath the fear there was something steadier, a refusal to let a lie be the last word. She set the phone down and moved to the bedroom doorway, where her mother dozed in the late morning light. "Mom," Emily said. Soft, Mary opened her eyes, a smile unfurling like a fragile flower. "There you are." "Tyler invited me to the gala," Emily said. Saying it out loud made the words absurd. A week ago, she would have laughed. Nathan is going to say something. He cancelled the contest. Mary's gaze sharpened with a mother's instinct. Do you want to go? Emily swallowed. I'm afraid. Of what? Of being seen, she whispered, and of not being seen at all. Mary's eyes filled, but her smile steadied. You were born to be seen for who you are. If you go, go as yourself. If you stay, stay for yourself. Either way, don't let fear choose. Emily nodded slowly, as if setting a stone inside her. I'll go. Evening fell with a kind of theatrical grace, the sky ironing itself into velvet as cars began to stream up the hill. The annual gala had always been the crown jewel of Nathan's social calendar, a place where power shook hands with beauty and called it philanthropy. Floodlights washed the facade. Photographers lined the entrance like a chorus. The cancellation of the contest had already whipped the media into a state of elegant frenzy. Headlines speculated, lips invented reasons, and every camera wanted proof of whatever story would sell tomorrow's news. Nathan arrived through a side entrance, declining the red carpet, declining the interview line. He wore a black suit and a white shirt open at the throat, stripped of the usual armor. His face was calm, but his pulse ticked hard at his wrist. He could do boardrooms. He could do battles with men who hid knives in contracts. This was different. This was the moment he would reach for something that could not be bought or spun. It was also the moment he could lose it. Tyler met him backstage, a stack of cue cards in his hand that Nathan waved away. I won't read, Nathan said. If I can't speak it plainly, I shouldn't say it at all. You won't be alone up there, Tyler replied, eyes flicking toward the edge of the curtain. She's here. Nathan's breath hitched. Where? Tyler angled his head. Nathan stepped to the side of the stage and looked through a slit in the drape. In the 5th row, near the aisle, Emily sat in a simple dress the color of dusk. Nothing sparkled. Nothing announced itself. And yet Nathan felt the entire room tilt toward her. She sat with her hands clasped, her shoulders squared with quiet courage, her gaze fixed not on the ceiling or her lap, but on the stage where he would soon stand. For a second, the noise of the gala dimmed, and all he heard was the echo of her laugh in the garden and the rain on the street outside her door. He closed his eyes and held onto that. The MC warmed the crowd with practice charm, introduced a short film about the foundation the gala supported, and thanked a litany of sponsors. When he announced Nathan, the audience rose with the reflex of people who knew where their bread was buttered. Nathan walked into the light. He didn't hide behind the podium. He stepped to the edge of the stage and let the room see him as a man, not a brand. The applause softened, then stilled. "Thank you for being here," he began. His voice was steady, unadorned. "Tonight was supposed to celebrate the finale of a contest many of you came to witness. You've already heard it's been cancelled. That's true. I cancelled it." A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. Cameras lifted. Vanessa, seated near the front with a group of industry figures, crossed one leg over the other and watched with a face carved into elegance. "I could give you a list of reasons," Nathan continued, "speak about integrity and values and timing, but the truth is simpler than that." He paused, searching for the right words and finding them in the memory of a drenched suit and a girl with a shaking rag. "I realized the thing I said I was searching for can't be measured by a runway or a resume. It can't be chosen like a product. It has nothing to do with diamonds or headlines." He let the silence grow, not afraid of it. "I didn't find what I was looking for on that stage," he said, and turned his head toward the 5th row. "I found it where no one expected. She wasn't wearing diamonds. She wasn't even invited, but she changed my life." The line hung there, a bell tone that seemed to keep ringing after the air moved on. People turned in their seats, murmurs rising like a tide. Emily did not shrink. She sat very still, as if any movement would break a spell. "This is not a stunt," Nathan said, anticipating the accusation and disarming it with the same honesty that had disarmed him. "This is me saying I've made mistakes, and I'm trying to correct them. I let someone be hurt in my house because I didn't stop a lie fast enough. I'm stopping it now. There will be no winner of a contest tonight. There wasn't supposed to be one in the first place." He waited, expecting the room to rebel, to balk at being denied a spectacle. Instead, something softened, as if a room built for artifice had been forced to remember its beating heart. Somewhere, a person began to clap, then another. It wasn't thunderous, it was real. Nathan's eyes found Emily's again. "If she allows me," he said, and suddenly he was not the man on stage, but the boy beneath all the armor. "I'd like to walk out of here with her." It was a new kind of silence then, the kind that felt like permission being granted by 1,000 eyes. Nathan stepped back from the light and handed the podium to the MC, who stumbled through a thank you, a call for dinner, and the promise of an evening of generosity. But the script had already been rewritten. Backstage, Tyler's grin was quick and unguarded. "You did it," he said. "No," Nathan replied. "She did." He moved through the side corridor to the edge of the ballroom as people rose from their seats and drifted toward tables. He didn't hurry. He let the noise fold around him, let faces blur into a wash of curiosity and opinion. When he reached the aisle where Emily sat, she stood before he could speak. "I was terrified," she said, her voice barely above the hum of the room. "So was I," he answered, and they both smiled with the relief of two people discovering they had survived the same storm. "I don't know how to exist in this," she admitted, gesturing lightly at the chandeliers, the glass, the eyes. "You don't have to," he said. "Exist with me. We'll walk out together." She took a breath that seemed to unspool something tight in her chest. Then she nodded. They did not rush. They threaded through the tables, past people whose opinions had built empires and toppled them, past compliments and stares and whispers that grew less sharp as the couple grew nearer to the doors. Vanessa watched them approach with a smile that acknowledged defeat only in the smallest tightening at the corner of her mouth. She inclined her head a fraction, as if to say she understood the rules had changed. Or perhaps as if to promise the rules would never stay changed for long. It didn't matter. The door was ahead. Outside, the night had rinsed itself clean. Flashbulbs popped like distant fireworks, and the questions flew. Was the contest truly over? Who was she? How long had they known each other? But Nathan didn't stop to feed them. He reached for Emily's hand and linked their fingers. The cameras caught it. Their hands, not his car, not the cut of his suit. Her simple dress picked up amber from the marquee lights and turned it into its own quiet radiance. In frame after frame, the story wrote itself without permission. The billionaire and the girl no one saw, walking shoulder to shoulder into air that finally felt honest. They didn't say much in the car. The silence between them was a blanket, not a wall. When they reached her building, he didn't ask to come up. He kissed her forehead and rested there for a second, like a prayer whispered into the space just above her eyes. "Sleep," he said. "Tomorrow can be bigger. Tonight should be small." She smiled. "Tomorrow can wait." It didn't, of course. News outran sleep. By morning, the city had made them into everything and nothing. Fantasy, scandal, inspiration, target. Nathan's PR team sent him drafts of statements he refused to read. Tyler fielded calls that ricocheted from congratulatory to furious. Through it all, Nathan chose a different work. He called the staffing agency and made sure Emily's record reflected the truth. He called security and had the footage's fragments restored and archived, along with a formal apology. He asked the legal department to review procedures without turning the house into a prison. He did not say Vanessa's name aloud. He didn't need to. The world knew its own kind of justice. Days became weeks. The attention swelled and then found new prey, as it always does. Nathan and Emily learned the odd choreography of two lives that should never have intersected and now refused to separate. He took off his armor when he crossed her threshold. She learned not to apologize every time she made him laugh. He showed her the ocean before dawn, from a quiet beach no one used. She showed him how to shop with cash for groceries and carry them home like the world was small enough to hold. They were not perfect. There were moments when fear reared and old voices shouted. In those moments, they went back to the sentences that had started it all. Don't let them make you feel small. You're the only person in this house who makes me feel alive. The sentences became a bridge they could cross when the water rose. A year later, the garden was different, smaller, gentler, untouched by photographers or press releases. They chose a friend's home just beyond the city, a yard walled in by climbing roses and a single plane tree that threw lacework shadows across the grass. The aisle was a path of petals. Mary had insisted on arranging herself, stubbornly ignoring offers of help until Emily took the basket from her and laughed, promising to finish while her mother sat and supervised like a benevolent queen. Mary looked better. Time and proper treatment had not erased her illness, but it had given back a color to her cheeks and a steadiness to her breath. When she settled into the front row, she pressed a handkerchief to her mouth, as if to hold in all the words she would not interrupt the moment with. Nathan stood at the end of the aisle in a suit he would wear for no one else and for no other reason. Tyler stood near him, uncharacteristically emotional, pretending to check his watch to avoid being caught wiping at his eye. A small group of friends gathered, people who had not come to be seen but to witness. Music began, the softest thread, and Emily stepped into the afternoon light. She wore a dress that moved like water, and nothing that glittered except her eyes. When she reached the end of the aisle, she turned and kissed her mother's forehead, and Mary's hand shook as it held her daughter's for a second longer than tradition permitted. Nathan took Emily's hands, and the world narrowed. He had faced rooms full of men ready to deny him billions. He had spoken to crowds who could judge his worth with a glance. He had never felt his voice catch like this. "I thought I needed to design a test," he said. His words meant for her and no one else. "I thought love could be found by building a perfect room and inviting the world inside. You taught me the room was the problem. You found me in a mess and made me laugh, and then you looked at me and saw not the man people had invented, but the person I had misplaced. I can't promise you a life without storms. I can promise you that when the rain comes, I will go to your door, and I will stand there until you let me in." Emily's smile was wet now, the kind of smile that comes from both joy and ache. "I was afraid of being seen," she said. "I had learned to move quietly, to carry my life without asking anyone else to hold the other end. You saw me, and I didn't disappear. You stood in front of your world and said my name without saying it, and you reached for me in a room that had never wanted me there. I can't promise I won't be scared sometimes. I can promise I'll tell you when I am, and I'll listen when you are, and I'll walk with you even when the path feels too bright or too dark to understand." There was more laughter then, soft and good, the kind that lives in homes. They exchanged rings that were simple because the complicated parts had already been done. When the officiant pronounced what everyone there had known since the night lanterns had hung from a garden tree, Nathan kissed her with a gentleness that had nothing to prove. Afterward, they lingered in the yard, no schedule tugging them, no obligations except plates to be filled and stories to be told. Mary stood, and Nathan went to her without being asked. She took his hands in both of hers and looked up at him with eyes that had watched too much suffering and refused to turn bitter. "Thank you for seeing my girl," she said. "Not everyone does." He blinked against a sudden rush of feeling. "She taught me how." "You take care of each other," Mary whispered. "That's wealth." He nodded, unable to answer, and Mary, satisfied, squeezed his fingers and let him go. At dusk, the garden light shifted through gold into blue. Fireflies stitched the air with bright threads. Someone started a song on a cheap speaker. Someone else burned the edges of the bread on the grill and laughed. Nathan and Emily slipped away to the edge of the lawn where the roses grew thickest, and for a minute they stood without speaking, listening to the life they had chosen taking root behind them. He looked at her, at the woman the city had tried to rename and the woman who had refused. "All the money in the world," he said quietly, "and I never learned until you that real things don't answer to it." She brushed her thumb under his eye, where an emotion had threatened to leave its mark. "Real things don't scare when the lights are off," she replied. "They stay." They turned back to the sound of their people and walked toward it together, not because anything about them needed to be displayed, but because joy wants witnesses. As they reached the circle of light, Tyler raised a glass and said something charming and brief. Mary dabbed her eyes again. The night folded them in. Nathan had all the money in the world, but standing there with Emily's hand in his, he finally held something that couldn't be tallied or traded. It was simple and towering at once, a quiet certainty that threaded through everything. This was real. And Emily, who once moved like a shadow at the edge of rooms built for other people, no longer disappeared when lights turned harsh. She was not a rumor or a mistake to be hustled out a side door, or a footnote in someone else's story. She was seen. She was chosen. She was deeply, unshakably loved. Sometimes the greatest love stories are not about glamour, fortune, or power, but about two hearts daring to see each other when the world refuses to. What about you? Do you believe true love can cross worlds that seem impossible to join? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're ready for another journey filled with secrets, twists, and emotions, the next story is already waiting for you on the screen. Don't miss it.